Wait till the damn shower's done. Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you are all still safe and happy and taking care of yourselves and all that good stuff. Today I am going to talk about the things that I have learned about the creative process along the way as an artist. Now, it is raining, so hopefully the sound is not going to be too bad. I'm not sure if it's going to pick up on that, but we're going to do this. So if you don't know, I have been in the arts for pretty much my entire life. I have been in theater for almost 25 years, performing. I've gotten my bachelor's degree, there we go, in theater direction. I have dabbled in other arts as well. I am a writer, lots of things. My mom is an artist, she's a visual artist, she does collage, things like that. There's a lot of creativity throughout my family. Yeah, just pretty much surrounded by lots of it. So these are the things that I have learned in all of my experience and my different mediums and everything like that about the creative process and the chaos that goes with it. So first, and something big, is that there is a lot of talk, if you are a visual artist, you know about the ugly stage. And the ugly stage comes about midway through on whatever piece you're working on, where you've started to create it and it just doesn't look good. It looks just crappy, or I can't even describe. It's just a stage in any art form that you get to where it's not good. And this happens with writing, this happens with theater. I can say very definitely as a director, I have seen this happen in theater. There's a point where the play is just not good, but you know, in any of these forms, you know it'll get better. You just have to push through it. You have to accept that right now it's in the ugly stage and keep going. I have found this to also be very true for the creative process. I think the creative process has an ugly stage right before you hit a point of growth, and it has a lot to do with the learning process. So especially if you are trying something new, or you're learning, or you're about to hit some sort of breakthrough or something, you're going to have an ugly stage where it doesn't feel as good, it doesn't look as good, all those things. It's because you're making maybe big adjustments, maybe micro adjustments, but you're making adjustments to whatever it is that you're working on, or whatever stage of your process you're in. So I feel like this could discourage a lot of people. I know sometimes it can feel very discouraging, even to me, and I know to expect it. But the thing that you have to do is just stick with it, because if you're in that ugly process, that means that you're going to get through it, and the next stage is going to be even better. You will have come through this period of growth a bit stronger as an artist and a creative. A second thing is that annoying little voice in the back of your head that tells you that you're not good enough, that you're undeserving, any of those awful messages, things like that. You have to find a way to stop listening to that voice. It is very important for your own creative process and happiness to not listen to that voice, to put that voice aside. And a lot of times, I think a thing that most people in general don't realize is that a lot of times that naggy little voice that's putting you down isn't your voice. It comes from somewhere in your past where someone or something made you feel like it wasn't good enough, that you had to think that way, and that's where that voice is coming from. So it's really hard to get rid of that voice, and it's certainly not something that you're always going to be super great at. You're going to have days where you're not as good at putting that voice away, but you got to figure out whatever technique you need to use to take that voice and put it away. Do that. For me, a lot of times it's just a matter kind of ignoring that voice, honestly. Like, it's still there, and I may be feeling not so great about what I'm doing, but I have to recognize, you know what? That's all me, that's all my internal stuff, and even if I hear that voice, I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing, because I know there's going to be people out there that are going to appreciate my creative work, whatever it is. Yeah, so for me, it's just ignoring that voice, but I know that doesn't work for everyone. So there are a lot of different techniques that you can do. If it helps to visualize putting that voice in a box, it doesn't mean that you're putting it in there permanently, you're just putting it in there temporarily so that you can get through your work. Sometimes that helps, that especially that point of putting it in there temporarily doesn't feel like such a big thing mentally. It's just putting it away for now, deal with it later, that sort of thing. If you do have a lot of that voice in your mind, sometimes speaking with a therapist can help, because they can help you work out where it came from and help you process and work through it so that you can hopefully get that voice either reduced or get it to go away, or it just helps you gain more power over it. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you can do, but you gotta do it because you deserve it. You are so much better than that. And you know what? Sure, maybe you're just starting out and your art is not at the same level as someone else's, but that's okay, because first off, your art is never going to be like someone else's. It's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be your art. And second, you're gonna get better as time goes on. The more you do it, the more you practice, it's gonna get easier. You're gonna be able to try new things. That's just life. Okay, now that the storm has settled down, that was a nice long heavy rain, which is amazing for all of the plants, and especially my patio garden and everything like that. Not as great for the filming, but that's okay because I love the smell of rain, so it's fine. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about is organization. So organization and the creative process, those two don't always like to go together. They can always be, not always be, but they can often be like oil and water. However, I think the important thing to remember here in your particular creative process and situation is you have to find what works best for you. So if you are the type of person that needs routine and structure and you actually work a lot better with those things, then you need to put those in place and start those habits and figure out, what exactly is going to help promote that. That is a totally understandable way to have a creative process because it takes all of the extra stuff that you regularly need to do or worry about, whether that is just your daily going through life stuff or scheduling things or just making sure that your space is organized and you know where everything is. Those things, basically, having that routine is going to take those off of your plates. You don't actually have to think about them. You just know what is coming down the road or where things are or what your routine is, things like that. So you can put more time and thought and effort into the creative stuff that requires your actual attention. It changes up regularly, things like that. However, there's the other side of the spectrum that just needs the chaos, essentially. It helps with the process. It is freeing. And that side of it, you're going to be more geared towards letting your creativity go, basically not putting restrictions on yourself, feeling like you have to fit in a box. It frees up your mental state. It allows you to jump from one thing to the next a little bit more easily, come up with ideas more easily, stuff like that. It just depends. I am a little bit more in the middle, maybe on the organized side. Yeah, I guess I would probably lean a little bit more in that direction. I'm not super structured. I actually probably could use a little more structure, but I also do like having a little bit of that chaos to balance it out. But I cannot be in the total chaos because it's just then too overwhelming. There's just too much clutter. It makes it very difficult for me to focus, things like that. But I do also appreciate the freeing your mental state, things like that, coming up with better ideas just through discovery. I don't know exactly. But yeah, I mean, the important part is you have to figure out exactly what is going to work for you, and you can't let anybody persuade you to do something that doesn't fit what you need for your creative process. You shouldn't take judgment if you are, especially if you're on the far spectrum and somebody doesn't understand how that fits into your creative process. You need to just say, you know what, that's you. I understand your creative process is different. This is mine. It works for me. Stuff like that. I mean, also you need to understand that, especially if your space is around someone else and if you're working from home or something like that, obviously there's a limit to how much chaos you can have if it's a shared space, if it's not something that's tucked away. And same goes for structure, but yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of trying things and figuring out what's gonna best support your creative endeavors. The fourth thing is actually something that I kind of learned from my improv classes in college. So again, I've been in theater most of my life. I took improv in college. I haven't really done that much improv otherwise, but I did learn so much from improv, and I highly recommend it, especially if you feel like you get very caught up in things or stuck, or you have a hard time brainstorming, things like that. Improv can make a lot of people really uncomfortable, but it is so good for you. And here's why, multiple reasons why. It taught me that if I am stuck on something, that I'm probably overthinking it. Now with improv, it's all about rapid fire, making quick decisions. You may have some basic framework, but otherwise you just have to say and do things naturally. It's also completely built on the phrase and the concept, yes, and. So it's forcing you to say yes to something that someone has given you and then building upon that. And that helps keep everything going. The idea behind that, it totally makes sense, because if you say no to something that someone has said, it can stop the scene right there. It just makes it really hard for you to work off each other, that sort of thing. So yes and is something that you can apply in a lot of different places in your life. And obviously there's appropriate times to use it. You need to also still have your healthy boundaries. So saying yes to every potential job offer, not necessarily the best way to go. It depends. It depends. You gotta use your best judgment. But yeah, so that, and then also the speed at which that has to happen forces you to start letting go. That's also where I really learned to stop listening to that voice inside my head, is because to successfully do improv, I didn't have time to listen to that voice in my head. And that's where I got the practice of ignoring it. It may still be there. I don't have time. I need to work off of the other person and say whatever the next thing that comes to mind is. Like, it's, that rush is the best way to get unstuck. So that's also something very useful you can do in your creative process. If you're stuck, set yourself a very short timer, or figure out how to do just quick, word vomit or art vomit, or don't real vomit. No one wants the real vomit. But, do something very quick that just forces you to come up with stuff, and understand that those things are not all going to be gems. They don't need to be gems, but it's getting your brain working. It's getting you unstuck and hopefully moving you past that point to where you can continue whatever artwork or creative thing that you are working on. All right, and then number 5 is burnout versus just a creative block. Now, those two can be a little tricky, especially if you're not used to defining the difference between them, to figure out, if you're burned out and you just need to take a break, or if you just have a creative block and you need to push through it. Now, there have been many a time that I know I myself have done this, and I know so many artists and creatives do this too, where you were actually burned out and you need to take a break, but you're trying to push through. And then also vice versa, you have people who just have a creative block, but they let that stop them, and then they don't necessarily get back into it, or it takes a long time. And it's totally fine when you do one of those, less so the burnout. It's totally fine if you have a creative block and you take a break. Sometimes you just also need to understand that you're not going to make as much progress as quickly. So if you really are trying to be a creative professional, or pursue anything like that, or you have a deadline, you can't necessarily justify the break as well. I mean, But the important thing to understand is when you are burnt out, you are going to feel so weighed down and overwhelmed, tired. You're going to have trouble focusing. It probably will affect your mood. You may feel angry or sad, different things like that. Those are going to be more geared towards burnout. And the burnout may come from specifically pushing too hard and working too much on your creative stuff. It could be coming from external sources in the world, especially right now. We've all got a lot of stressors going on from the external world. It could be internal stuff. Maybe you've got some stuff that you need to process, or that has been triggered by other things. Who knows what? But yeah, if you're feeling like very emotionally drained or affected, or just exhausted and cannot get yourself to focus, it's not going to help to beat yourself up. You just need to take a break, and you need to accept that taking a break means not doing it, not beating yourself up about not doing it. Let yourself have that break. That's all a part of the creative process. Nobody can go 100% all the time without sacrificing something somewhere. And just because you see other creatives who appear to be going 100% all the time doesn't mean that you see the whole picture. There's got to be something somewhere that is imbalanced, and that's also their life. That's not your life. You are not them. They are not you. So you need to worry about you and your balance. Now, if you are just stuck, can't really come up with ideas for something, or just not really inspired by what it is that you're working on, but you're not necessarily feeling overwhelmed or exhausted, you just don't really know what to do, that's creative block, and that's when you should push through. Now, a great way to do that is what I talked about with the improv, where you set yourself a timer and you just try to word vomit or create vomit or whatever. Just don't focus on making something good, just make. Once you do that, it'll start getting kind of your brain working again, and then eventually you'll be able to figure out how to work through that block. Also, finding things that inspire you, whether that is reading or going to a museum or nature or cooking. I mean, there's a variety of things. You have to figure out what's going to help inspire you. I know for me personally, things that help kind of get me inspired, there's a few YouTube creators that I love to watch that really get me inspired to do things. I sometimes will be inspired to read a book, but I haven't been reading as much lately. I get a lot of inspiration from my friends and fellow creators on TikTok, so that's a great source for me personally. There's inspiration everywhere. So if you need to take a little bit of time and focus on finding inspiration, that's good too. But I would still definitely do that pushing through technique and just creating. It doesn't have to be good, but if you get in the process of creating, it'll just kind of kickstart your brain. But either way, you gotta pay close attention to that and make sure that you're taking care of yourself. That is the most important thing, because if you do actually have burnout, it doesn't matter how much inspiration you seek, it doesn't matter how much you push through, it's just not going to fix it, because you just need to rest. And that's okay. Alright, so yeah, those were the 5 things that I've learned about the creative process. I'm sure there's more, but those are the ones that come to mind right now. Hopefully that kind of helps you understand the creative process better, especially if you've been struggling with any parts of that, or not necessarily aware of how the process works. Hopefully that helps you. Also, if you've noticed different things about your creative process, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. I think the whole creative process is fascinating, and the way people do things and think of things, and just, there are so many amazing creative people out there. It's astounding, and everybody's got their own process. So cool. So cool. Anyway, if you liked this video and you found it helpful at all, go ahead and give it a thumbs up for the good stuffs. If you like me and listening to me talk, maybe, I don't know. I put out a video pretty much every week on Fridays, so go subscribe. My videos tend to cover predominantly my lifestyle / creative endeavors as far as becoming a professional storyteller and content creator. So if you would like to join me on this journey, I would welcome it. You can connect with me on other platforms too. I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter occasionally, so I wouldn't necessarily pick that as my first choice, but you know, if that's your main platform, you can find me there. And then also feel free to check out my Patreon. I've got a few levels on there, and you'll get some exclusive behind the scenes content, bloopers, advanced information about stories and things that I'm creating that I only share early there, other good stuff. But otherwise, I hope you all stay safe and happy and healthy, and continue pursuing whatever delightful creative things you're pursuing. And yeah, I love you, weirdos. Bye.